Awesome. So, hey guys, what is going on? It's Jay Campbell, of course, the founder of the Decoders of Truth, and I'm extremely humbled and excited and honored here today, guys.
It's Jay Campbell.
Oh, sorry about that.
Of course, the founder of the Decoders.
With Jeff Daugherty. Now, guys, a lot of you guys now know who Jeff is in the group. You've probably seen him on the Leak Project. He's a very, very knowledgeable, experienced guy in the esoteric and the research communities. He's done a lot of stuff. He's been obviously on Coast to Coast with George Norrie. But I'm very honored to have him here today. And I want to, before I introduce him, I want to just give you guys a little bit of a backstory. I didn't know Jeff. As knowledgeable about all this stuff as I am, I did not know of Jeff until I saw him on a podcast with the Leak Project about 3 weeks ago. He sent me his books. I sent him my books, and I started reading. And guys, let me tell you something. Jeff is truly one of the most knowledgeable guys, in my opinion, on the entire planet when it comes to knowing what's really going on this earth and this matrix, this riddle, this enigmatic, misunderstanding. But with all that said, man, I'm so happy to have you here today, brother. How are you?
Jay, I really appreciate that. It's humbling to hear you say that. And I want to say before we get started and before I forget, number one, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. But you did send me a couple of your books, and I started using the blowtorch, TRT blowtorch intermittent fasting. It's only been about 4 days, but I can actually see in the mirror that I'm leaner. I feel way better, and I think it's going to be a tremendous life changer for me. I hurt my knee playing hockey. Gained probably 30 pounds that I can get rid of, and I think your methodology is going to help me do it in short order. I really appreciate you sending me that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's an amazing diet from a standpoint of it works fast, and anyone can do it, right? You don't have to have any kind of a fitness level. You just have to have a mindset that you're going to fast, 3 or 4 days a week, depending on how much body fat you need to lose. But before we go into the many, many things that we're going to talk about today, and I promised everybody in the group that this is going to be mind-blowing because Jeff can really take us down the rabbit hole. It's funny that we're talking about fasting because, and you and I haven't had this conversation, but I've had this conversation with other people. Fasting truly is, in my opinion, the connection or the portal to spirit. And when you can deny yourself of food, which is essentially denying yourself of ego, and control that, that's how you truly can open up a passageway / a gate / whatever you want to, what's within, right? I mean, that's all the great spiritual teachers and gurus, have talked about it, as mentioned fasting, going into the wilderness, going into the mountains, and really becoming one with yourself. And I've now myself learned to fast 60 plus hours. And I can say without question that when I get to 48 hours or longer, I truly do connect to God source or, creator of all source, whatever you want to call it, that the power that's within, that resides within you. And you really do feel, I don't know how to describe it, Jeff. It's just this amazing, interconnected, when I'm typing or I'm writing or something like that, I feel like the words just come to me without even thinking them. It's amazing.
I totally agree with you. And I've never heard anyone connect it to ego before like you just did. And that's profound because, why is it so hard to fast? Of course, it's hard to, to push away from food and not eat food. But I think the bigger deal is that even though it feels like it's your stomach that's, growling or screaming, I think it's really your ego, brother. And you hit the nail on the head. And if you can get past that, first 2-3 days, if you really want to do that, you can really break through not only in fitness and fat loss, but you can have tremendous spiritual breakthroughs. And I've never heard anyone connect it to ego. And I think you just hit it right on the head. That's a profound revelation.
Thanks, man. I wish I got to give it to my buddy Daniel Kelly because he actually brought this up when we were writing the Metabolic Blowtorch Diet. He helped me with a lot of the research. He was like, well, think of this statement, Jay. Think of this axiom. Think of the food for thought. Who put that into the English language as an axiom, right? So there it is right there. That's the ego. And then you combine that with your books, and we're gonna get to your books. I want to talk about your background in a second here, but I don't want to skip ahead. But the truth is, and this is what I always say on the podcast I do when I talk about the fasting and the Metabolic Blowtorch Diet. You know this, Jeff, but 60 years ago, people did not eat more than 2 or 3 times a day. There wasn't even instant food. We didn't have microwave ovens. We didn't have ready packs and meal replacement powders and all these things that they have, this instantaneous GMO engineering. And so people literally did go 16, 18, 20 hours usually between meals. And they were fine for it. So it goes back to what you said. the ego, the engineering of today, this instant gratification world, is what makes people overeat. And then when you overeat, right, you're shocked, you become fat, obese, you become unhealthy, you have inflammation, all these things that leads a person to being blocked, right, from receiving the spirit, from receiving truth, internal resignation, all these things. So it's like most people walking around in society today are blocked off from everything. What are your thoughts on that?
That's very profound from a spiritual standpoint, but think of it, and you're 100% right, 100% agree, but even this flashed in my mind as you were talking, just take it back to the old adage of follow the money. When people eat more, they're spending more money on food, they're spending more money at McDonald's and all the other horrible places, and then they get fatter, and they got to buy more clothes, and they get fatter, they got to buy more pharmaceuticals, they get more sedentary, they're watching more advertising, so they're buying more products, and it's part of this mind control matrix. I hate to use the word matrix, it's so redundant, it's so overused, but it is a mind control matrix, and it is a spiritual control matrix and a financial control matrix. And we both know that and not everybody that's fit is spiritual, but the more fit you are, the greater opportunity you have to access your spirit.
There's no doubt about that, and you proved that in your book, and we're going to get to that in a second. And honestly, that's profound, by the way, too, because I've always believed, because I'm very deep reader of Manly Hall, and Manly Hall wrote back in the 20s and 30s, and this is again crazy. Talk about a guy who was truly like, I don't know if he was channeling or if he had walk-ins or he was very connected, but he talked about the male endocrine system, not just the male, but the human endocrine system, and that manipulating the endocrine system and the endocrine glands was more important in medicine than anything else. And this is before they even understood anything about endocrinology. This was back, he wrote this I think it was in 1929. I've actually sent that to some of my doctors, and they're like, who is this? I mean, this guy's knowledge of that was so profound. But it goes back to what you're saying, and you write about this. You have to have chakra alignment. If you don't have chakra alignment, you're blocked. It's as simple as that. And hormonally being optimized, being fit, like you said, eating a clean diet, going into nature, connecting, rooting yourself in Gaia, that's the only way that you can actually deal with this assault from, engineered everything.
And think about it, Jay. They've got us by design so insulated from the earth, so insulated from Gaia. I mean, we get out of our house walking on textile carpets, we put on rubber-soled shoes and walk over sidewalks which have do not step on the grass signs. We ride on, two highways and walk through another sidewalk to get into the place that we work, another artificial environment. When's the last time you took your shoes off and walked in the grass or went in connection with the earth? And in addition to being fit physically, if you would actually spend at least 15 minutes a day in direct connection with Gaia, with earth, it would transform your life.
You're right. And by the way, I do that every day. My wife and I literally every single day, we go out in the backyard and she does her morning ritual, and that's part of it. She sun gazes and puts her feet in the grass. So
I sun gaze at the beach at the beach every morning.
Awesome, man. You have to. I mean, you really do. That's one of the great battles. Okay, so we're going to get into all that stuff. Let's start. I want to talk, as I always do, I want to talk about you. Obviously, you have this amazing background. So before we even get into your background, just tell us about yourself, for people that don't know you. I'm sure most people do, and they know who you are and whatnot, but just tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Well, it's kind of it's a weird story. I spent 20 years as a Pentecostal minister, licensed Pentecostal minister with 3 of the largest Protestant organizations or denominations in the world. And I mean, it was my life. I'm a Bible college graduate, and that's what I did. I was a preacher, and I was a full-time preacher, and that was who I was. And I've always been a person that was seeking after truth. Even, sometimes it's hard to believe that I wound up where I did if I was really seeking for truth. But as I began to study and read and look, I began to see what I call some cracks in the foundation of big-time religion. I started to see that there were a lot of things in the Bible, particularly in the teachings of the Apostle Paul, that didn't line up and even contradicted strongly things that the Christ said. And I'm not here, Jay, to tell anybody what to believe. I think everybody has the right to believe what they want to believe. I spent 6 years in the United States Air Force. I believe in freedom of choice. But I also believe that you have the freedom, you should have the freedom to have all the information at your disposal. So what I try to do as the Christian whistleblower is the moniker I use. Somebody actually went on Coast and used that as a they were not in a complimentary way. But I thought, you know what, I like that. I'm going to use that. But what I try to do is give people all of the information about the true religion of Paul, the true religion of the Christ, help people understand what lies beneath the foundation of their faith, and then just let them look at it and evaluate it. And if I can get someone to stop and think what lies under the foundation of their faith, my work here is done, Jay.
So, again, man, epic. I agree. Well, let me just say, you're very humble. And I
Well, I appreciate that.
No, but you really are. I mean, in my opinion, and as obviously I've told you this through text messages, you've decoded something that very few people have been able to decode. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some people that have, because you and I have talked about those people. We know that Robert Stanley is also very much in the know. The guy John Piniella, who's written his books, which you guys don't even know each other. You guys are almost clones and mirror images of each other from the image. A lot of the people in the Decoders of Truth are aware of the John Piniella books. So.
I hope he's a good-looking individual if we're clones, Jay.
Yeah, he's not as good-looking as you, I don't think. You definitely got him. At least from his bio picture. But actually, John is actually a really nice guy, and I sent him one email, and he immediately wrote me back, and then it led into about 10 different emails. But he's an interesting figure. He definitely will reply. He's a very humble guy, too. He's very similar to you. But I just wanted to say you're humble because your books are – okay, so this is not ego. Most people in this group know this. Okay, I've read more than 500 books on the esoteric. I am prolific. I'm very blessed. I have close to a photographic memory of things I read. I have knowledge about a lot of things in the world. And your books, and I've only read 2, in my opinion, are as close to the truth. Because I always say this, and I've talked about this on Rex's shows too, that internal resonation for me is the ultimate guide.
Absolutely.
When I read things and I have hairs standing on my back, on my body up, and I have the, that full like centrifugal like chakra alignment where I'm like, wow, I'm dialed in, I'm tuned. I always read when I'm doing cardio. And when I first started reading your book, the first book, the Jesus the Christ book, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the book, but I was just mind blown. I mean, I was taken back. Now, that's not like I haven't read so much, right? I've read all of the the Masters of the Far East works, right? Which is all about Christ consciousness. I've read Paulson's book, The Christ Consciousness. So I've read a lot, but you really put a lot of stuff together. There were a lot of gaps for me. And I feel like you connected the gaps because I always felt that, and again, we're not trying to offend anybody. We're just going to talk about the book, that the Christ is different than Jesus Christ, right? Because when you read those books, they would always refer to it as Jesus the Christ and not Jesus Christ. And so it was always this massive confusion for me. Like, this seems like it's 2 different people. So anyway, just to skip ahead, you guys please support Jeff's work. His books are absolutely amazing. They're PDF books. I think you have them in paperback too, but like
I do.
Order the paperbacks because you're going to be going back to these books, okay? And you're going to be reading them over and over again because he ties so many missing pieces together, especially with his understanding of the biblical texts. But, in a nutshell, and we'll just get right to it because we're going to go down this rabbit hole, Jesus Christ is not the Christ. The Christ is one of the Elohim, okay? One of the Elohim known as the Word, which as Jeff has kind of decoded is probably a number of the Elohim, direct from God or creator, source, or whatever you want to refer to it as. And Jesus Christ is a fictitious, potentially apparition of, like you said, the Apostle Paul and the Lord. And we'll talk about who the Lord is. I mean, you're very open about who you think the Lord is, but, what are your thoughts on what I'm just saying?
Yeah, I think you summarized it really well, and probably the easiest thing for people to do, not buying any books or anything like that, they can just go to my YouTube channel, just type in Jeff Daugherty YouTube or Christian Whistleblower YouTube, and I have about 930 videos, and you can pretty much get a spiritual education right there just watching those videos, and it's broken down in sections so you can see what you want to see, and you can actually focus your study on it. So, yeah, I think that was transformational for me to realize that the name of the book is actually Jesus and the Christ, because they are two different personages. The Christ is the Elohim, like you very correctly pointed out, that manifest in the flesh. He was the Word. He manifest in flesh. And he's the one that gave us the ways and the truths, I believe, that lead into life and life more abundant. And he says, there's a scripture that says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. That sounds very exclusive when it's written in the King James Version. But if you get into the Greek, it says, I have brought you the best of all the ways of human spirituality, the best of all the truths of human spirituality, to provide a path that if you'll walk down it, will lead you to life and life more abundant. And if you look at those ways and truths, you find things, as you said, from the Far East. You find things from India. You find things from Native American thought. You find things from Pacific Islander thought. You find things from the Nordic thought. You find things from all sorts of different religious modalities. So this idea that we have in the West that, there's only one God, there's only one way, and everybody else is going to this place called hell. When you think about it, it just borders on the ridiculous. And Jesus, this Jesus person, is nothing but a copy of religions that existed for thousands of years before Jesus supposedly was ever born. And this Jesus figure was created to make us forget about the Christ, and also set up as a holding place for when the Lord wants to perpetrate what I think will be, at least attempt to be, a final false flag and come back and try to take over the planet. He'll enter this Jesus personage that he's set up, which is not even a real person.
So there's so many things I want to go, so many rabbit holes I want to go down with you. So, and we got to keep it, very lay for the people that don't know anything about you. But again,
sure.
Please, and I know, again, you're so humble. Buy Jeff's books, guys. Anybody that we bring on the podcast and Decoders of Truth, you support their work. I mean, Jeff's research is it's, in my opinion, there's really nothing much like it. There are a couple other people. But anyway, let's just talk about that. So in your opinion, and I know who it is, but who is the Lord?
Well, my opinion is interesting, but let's try to answer that question by saying, who did the Christ say the Lord was? Yeah. Well, the Christ said that the Lord is his adversary. And the problem comes in translation. In the New Testament, we have this word called Satan, and we think of a guy with horns and a red suit and a pitchfork. But the word is really Satan, and what it means is adversary.
Right.
So this being that we call the Lord, whenever you see in your Old Testament, capital L-O-R-D, when you're reading your New Testament, usually when it says Lord, that's who it's talking about. And this is the guy that appeared to Paul on the road, actually from Damascus to Antioch. He wasn't going to Damascus, he was coming from out in the middle of the desert. This is the one that appeared to him and said, I'm Jesus.
Right.
And the Christ said that where Jesus appeared to Paul in that flash of lightning. That word's only used twice in the entire, actually 3 times in the entire New Testament. Once is there with Paul. The other one is where the Christ said, I saw the Satan or Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Right. So regardless of what Jeff Daugherty thinks, the Christ equated the being that called Paul and gave Paul his message to being the same being that he saw fall from heaven like lightning, and that this being that we call the Lord is actually the arch adversary. And if you look at it in the original text, it doesn't just say adversary, it says the adversary. It has a definite article. So the Lord, who we've been worshiping all these years, is actually the arch adversary of the Christ. And if you want to follow the Lord, you're welcome to, but I think you deserve to know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say.
Exactly, as Paul Harvey. Good day.
Good day.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, again, and by the way, just so you know my history of religion, I was raised Catholic. Okay. I ran out of the church, many stories told this when I was 7 years old. My father chased me out of the back. My dad was very staunch Catholic. I'm one of 9 kids. My mom actually gave birth to 10.
Wow.
Very old Irish, Scottish, Italian Catholic family, brainwashed, conditioned. My dad still goes to Mass, 71. But it's mind-blowing to think that, and again, in your books, you've really explained, where the Christian, where the divisions are, from the Roman Catholicism to Christianity you've broken them all down in both of your books. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want to stay on the Lord because I want people to understand this.
And one thing I just want to make a point, Jay, None of this is my opinion. Everything that I do, if you watch my videos on YouTube, if you read my books, I go back to the text. I'm a text guy. Everything is drawn from the Old and New Testament, Hebrew and Greek text. So if you have an argument, it's really not with this crazy ex-Pentecostal evangelist. It's with the text. So just make sure that we understand I'm a very text-based with everything that I present.
No, you're all research-based. I'm glad you said that. And you know what? I think it actually stands to your credit that you were a fundamentalist, Bible-thumping, quote-unquote, right, Pentecostal, that you're now this person. So,
Jay, I was a Pentecostal's Pentecostal. I came up under Jimmy Swaggart. That's what I was. If you ever saw Steve Martin, Leap of Faith,
yes.
If I could have found myself one of those mirrored jackets, I would have worn it. Let me tell you, that was who I was. I mean, to the T.
That's awesome. But again, that just gives you, in my opinion, it gives you more credibility because you've been on that side of the ledger. So for all of these, and I won't, defame them or debase them, Christian fundamentalist people that, are known to come out and attack. Why would you attack Jeff? I mean, this is a man who lived your world. But anyway, neither here.
Let me say this about Jimmy Swaggart. He did have his issues, obviously. But I'll tell you what, that guy could get 6 cents out of a nickel. He was as straight as they ever came with a dollar bill. I'll say that for Jimmy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So back to, obviously, everything is yours is incredibly searched, cited. You're very scientific about everything. You've decoded a lot of stuff.
I try to be very empirical and objective.
No, you are. And you and I are very similar in that way. So getting back to the Lord, the adversary, the Satan. We've had Shane Bales on this podcast, and Shane is a guy who's a very good, close friend of mine now. I actually am going to have him on a podcast with you and me at a certain point. He's in Canada. Shane is a man who's extremely intuitive. He knows pretty much everything that you and I know and beyond. He's kind of like a guy, I think, who was probably a little bit conditioned and brainwashed by some of these. He tells it, he admits it, that he was like from the special projects, but that he has like natural, intuitive, empathic powers. They could not brainwash him, so they sent him packing. And now he's just kind of out and about, and they also allow him as a lone wolf to talk about what's really going on in the world, right? So he's very knowledgeable about these things. But anyway, I'm bringing him up because he talks about the reptilians. And the majestic lizards, as you refer to them, which is brilliant, by the way. And it seems like the Lord, the reptilians, however we want to classify them, I'm going to allow you to do this, and I know you'll do a great job of like collating it, bring it all together, are so intertwined with society, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. This world of commercialism and social media and mainstream news and Hollywood and politics. And as you said, the money magic system, it's all a control mechanism. One giant control mechanism that feeds off, I mean, they're multiple, but they feed off of each other into one, right?
Absolutely.
So who, in your opinion, and again, I know everything is supported, but I want to give you the credit. I don't want to talk about, what you've decoded. Who is the Lord?
That's a long story too. And I had so much anathema towards the whole reptilian thing. I didn't want to be around the reptilian thing. I didn't want to talk about the reptilian thing. Right. And it's been my honor to be on Coast several times, I think 7, 8, 9 times now. Awesome. And one of the times George said something to me about reptilians, and I kind of chuckled but I could hear in his voice that he was really saying, take a look at it.
Right.
So I started reading it, and I realized if you look, and this is crazy, but if you look at Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, first two verses of the Bible, it just says God created the heavens and the earth. And we all think a guy like Moses or Charlton Heston, right, created everything. But the word is gods and goddesses, male and female, plural in number.
Right.
And I'm like, the first word of the Bible blows your mind.
Yeah.
But the Lord was one of those Elohim, just like the word was. And he was actually one of the creator gods.
Yes.
And if you research further, I can show you in Isaiah, in Jeremiah, in Genesis, that the Lord is actually a reptilian being. It's very, very clear. No doubt. You can't deny it.
Without a doubt, by the way, without a doubt.
And I believe what happened, if you read, and the book of Job goes in with this too, the original creation of the human race didn't look at all like reptiles. And I think that his low reptilian, the aggression, the show of force, the suspicion got control of him, and he rebelled. And Jeremiah very clearly says that the original earth of Genesis 1:1 was destroyed by the Lord blowing fire through his nostrils.
Dragon, right?
Dragon. And then they threw the Lord out of the council of the Elohim. So he's a fallen God.
Right.
And then they rebuilt the earth, and the first being they made, and this is what really blows my mind. It just shows me how messed up the Lord was, because the first act they did on the recreated earth was to create a species, an upright hominid species,
right.
And it was called the majestic serpents. It was an upright serpentine being.
A reptoid. Yeah.
A reptoid. And then in Genesis 1:26 and 27, they created us, which is a hybrid. And we're demonstrably, scientifically, a reptile-human hybrid. So I know what George was...
Let me just stop you right there, because I want to give you more credit. Your decoding of Carl Sagan's book is the best I've ever seen of anybody.
I mean, I just got chills from that, because Sagan blew it up.
Did you ever contact him?
I did not. He was passed before I got into this whole thing, Jay. Yes. But when you said his name, I mean, it's called the Serpents of Eden, I believe.
Yes.
And I just get chills. And
it's incredible.
He wasn't a theologian.
He clearly knew everything and was shut up.
Yep. He wasn't a theologian. He was a scientist.
They literally shut him up because remember, he had to recant everything he did. But I don't want to sidebar too far. I want to get you.
And he won the Pulitzer for that book, by the way.
He did. And it's really a shame what they did to him, right? Because they do this to a lot of great people in the history of mankind. But, they made him a shill.
They did.
Anyway, get back to what you were saying. I apologize.
So, and just think of the Lord. If he'd have just, he had to know the plan, but he just couldn't help himself. It was his nature. Like the old story of the frog that carries the scorpion across his back on the river, and the scorpion stings him. They both die, and they're drowning. The frog says, "What'd you do?" The scorpion's like, "I don't know, man. I just had to be true to my nature.
I can't help it." Right.
Couldn't help it. So you've got the original humans, then the majestic serpents, and that is so clear, folks. If you look at the text, it's undeniable. And then you've got us created as a hybrid. But I knew what George was trying to get me to think about was, what happened to all those reptilians, those majestic serpents?
Right.
Where'd they go? Where are they? Well, either they live for a long time or they procreate, because, Jay, I'm convinced that there are some of them that are still among us to this day. And, you laugh about David Icke and the shape-shifting reptilians, but guess what? When we were created as Elohim, we knew how to shape-shift.
Exactly. Well,
the Elohim knew how to shape-shift. And guess what? The majestic serpents were shape-shifting long before we were. So they know how to do it, Jay. They can appear human, or they can appear in a different form.
Well, so you're going to...
And it's all in the it's all in the Bible, the book of Genesis, I promise.
It's so amazing. Truth with riddle. Yep. Truth with riddle.
Yeah.
Because remember, and I don't want to lose track of where I'm going with this, because Shane has decoded this about the reptilians and how they bend light. I mean, he can literally explain to you how that happens, and I can't wait till all three of us.
Well, the military's been copying the technology now.
Yeah, they know it. But so it's almost that chameleon in the wilderness type thing, right? Like
almost like Predator, right? Kind of, sort of. But man, it's so mind blowing to think about that you're right. It's all in the Bible. It's all layered. It's all very difficult to decode. It takes people like you to really go deep down this, path that you've gone down. And, the truth is Jeff, the Pentecostal mission and all of that was all part of everything, right? There's no mistakes. It's like I told you, there's no coincidences in life. Yep. Everything is part of our journey. And you don't look at things. Whenever I mentor a lot of the younger guys I work with and stuff like that, I tell them, don't look at things as like it was a colossal mistake or a failure. Don't ever look at any of that. It's a learning experience. There's no mistakes or failures. Everything is a learning experience. It's perception. But Jay, one time, and this is so good. I'm glad you said that. One time I was talking and I said that I let the Lord steal the best 20 years of my life. And then all of a sudden it was like I felt a slap, a spiritual slap. Like, how in the world could you say something like that? Are you really going to cede the best 20 years of your life? You're only 54 years old. The best 20 years of your life you have yet to live.
Exactly.
So I 100% agree with you. There are no quote unquote mistakes. And the people that are successful in life know that their past doesn't equal their future, and they learn how to leverage their past and their present to build the future that they want to live.
Exactly. Well said. Absolutely well said. There's no mistakes. It's just a learning experience. It's perception. It's taking what you've learned from the past issues, whatever they would be, good or bad. And again, if we use the axiom, and I know you have a lot to say. And by the way, you blew my mind in the second book, and I don't want to lose track of it. The Ascended Masters, the pre-Adamites or whatever in the astral world, being cowards. I mean, we'll get to that, but
Jay, here this just popped into my mind. This is what it's all about, man. I got an email yesterday from somebody that said, I was in a Pentecostal church. It was a woman. I knew that Paul hated women. I was so oppressed. She said, Jeff, I had saved up my pills. They were all there. I had the vodka. I was ready to kill myself.
Wow.
And I read, this gets to me. I read, this book was Final Message of the Last Apostle. She said, I read that book, and I'm still here because I read that book. If I hadn't read it, I would have killed myself.
Good for you, man.
That's what it's all about, brother. That's what it's all about. And I take a lot of crap, and I walked away from, I was making $250 a year plus. I walked away from all that, but I've never been happy. I've never been fulfilled. And this is it, man. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Money means nothing, bro. Everybody knows my story. I've been a millionaire, dude. Money is garbage.
I do like the options it gives you, but
it gives you freedom, but it's how you use the money. And there is a truth about exchange and kinetic energy and how you exchange and everything. But if you live your life in service to others and you just constantly are a conscious co-creator, you will make more money.
Absolutely.
It's part of the spiritual laws of the universe. But I really want to stay where we're here because
sorry about that.
I don't know why. No, it's good. I'm glad you told me that. It's awesome. Dude, we're the same. I literally every single morning I wake up and I get emails from people who said, literally, you saved my life. My wife was going to leave me. I haven't been able to get an erection. I have no energy in life. I went to the medical system, failed me. So we're both doing God.
People laugh about that, but man, for a man,
I'm sorry.
Dude, we're
doing the Christ's work. Isn't it amazing how brainwashed we are to say God?
It's so true. We are doing the work of the Christ.
So conditioned to say, dear God.
Yeah. It's so amazing, Jay. In health and fitness, you can do the work of the Christ. In the spiritual realm, you can do the work of the Christ. As a doctor, lawyer, law enforcement, wherever you are, you can do the work of the Christ, literally.
The Christ consciousness, man. You just have to possess the Christ consciousness. You have to serve others. You literally have to practice peaceful, loving kindness. I have a very good story about my wife. I'm going to save it for the end of this because one of the things that you talked about in the book. Okay, so this resonated. I could cry over this. This resonated so deeply when you broke up the Elo humans and the majestic serpents and how much of our DNA is really reptilian. Well, dude, it's hard for me to say this without me getting emotional. I'm mostly reptilian. Okay.
Mostly? Yeah.
I'm very left brain. Mm-hmm. I'm extremely intellectual. I'm extremely logical. I do not feel very much. The Elo human part of me is my heart. Anybody who really knows me very closely knows I have this massive heart. I try to take care of people. I help as much as I can. I donate, but I am deep down like a mean, hard, nasty reptilian. That's why when you said the story about the scorpion and the frog, it made me laugh because I get that from my father, my father's father. That's just, and again, this is generations of the Lord's bullshit inculcated in our minds.
Maybe it's an Irish thing, Jay, because I'm Irish too, and I'm right there with you, brother.
I think it's everybody, dude. I think if you come from a culture of war, a culture of violence, a culture of an eye for an eye, a culture of like, I'm not going to stand for that.
Yeah.
But see,
and I struggle with that, Jay. I'm from the Daugherty, which means the destroyers.
Yeah.
I struggle with it too, brother.
I know, it's amazing, dude. But it's so cool that you were able to decode that. But I'll get to the story in the end about like my wife, because my wife is like almost pure Elo human, dude. Like
nice.
she literally cannot step on a bug.
Oh, that's so awesome.
She can't. She stops me from defending her honor in public when people do stupid shit. Like I want to smash them. I've had stuff happen like where, I've been in an elevator in Las Vegas and, two drunk morons, guy and girl, get on the elevator and the woman turns to my wife and goes and blows smoke in her face.
Ah,
I mean, like, I literally pulled my wife behind me and I said to the guy, I was like, if your girlfriend, and I didn't use that term, doesn't apologize to my wife right now, I'm literally going to beat you to death in this elevator and make her watch. and literally, like, he said something stupid to me. And dude, I don't drink alcohol. I was completely sober. I reared back and my wife grabbed my arm and let them, the elevator, the door opened and they walked out, and I'm like, I got all mad. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm trying to help you. There's no violence in her.
yeah.
So you really, I told the story now just to make it relevant, but you really decoded something for me. And I literally was doing cardio like 4 days ago and I read that and I swear to God, dude, I started to tear up, man, because I really finally realized why my wife is the way she is. And I was like, why would she not like allow me to defend her honor? But she's literally a pure Elohuman. And she also, is deep in the meditative, very, very intuitive, very spiritual. So you're right, dude. You laid it all out, by the way, too. And again, guys, please read his books. I posted his website. Buy all of his books. His books are legitimately amazing. But you
I appreciate that. And that is a revelation. It helps people understand what's going on inside.
Well, you do explain it, though, and that's what I want people to understand, that this reptilian portion of us, you lay out all the qualities, you lay out all the ways that we act that way, and then you also talk about, the dove, the harmony, the love, this gratitude, this feeling of never being violent, the Christ consciousness, turn the other cheek, which people, how could you do that? But now that's what it is. My wife is like that.
Yep.
It's mind-blowing, man. Literally.
It is. I mean, and I'm not really all that sharp or smart. I've been doing this for 36 years, full-time basis. So, I mean, if you're doing something for 36 years, you ought to be able to figure out one or two things.
Well, again, you're very, very humble, but let's just continue on with the story. So, the reptilian, so where we are today, we're like the third or fourth iteration of, the experiments. Now, I know Rex has asked you this question before too, but the people in this group are very big in the Anunnaki mythos. Okay.
Right.
So you and I know that the Anunnaki has there's many names for the Lord, right?
Absolutely.
So I want you to kind of tie that together. Now, I know you've talked about this before, so this is going to be kind of easy for you. And you've also done a lot of research about the gods, correct? And all the various pantheon.
Exactly.
So who is then, for these guys to understand this, like, who are the Anunnaki from the Sumerian mythos, the Akkadian, the Babylonian mythos? Like, who are the Anunnaki in your opinion?
I'm not an expert in this area. That's not really my it's not in my my power stroke. It's not my big thing. But I have read a lot of the Sitchin stuff.
Right.
And I don't usually go down the road of trying to say Inky and Lil whoever, but I think when the interesting thing is, if you read, and not just Zachariah Sitchin, but if you read the Atrahasis, and if you read all the different
the Enuma Elish, all of it.
If you read that and then you read Genesis, you cannot help but realize that whoever wrote Genesis knew exactly what they were writing about, and to put it very nicely, copiously borrowed from those earlier things. And here's the problem that we have within Christianity. Yeah, they plagiarized it, but I was trying to be nice. But the thing that we have a problem with is, all of the early epics were thoroughly polytheistic, and the problem with the Bible is that they're trying to take this polytheistic theology and cram it into monotheism. They're trying to take their ultimate square peg and stuff it into a round hole, and it just doesn't work. And that's what I saw, the cracks. And I'm convinced that people more and more, Jay, are seeing it, and it's all falling apart because they're realizing this just doesn't add up. This just doesn't make sense.
Right. So do you think it was Justinian or it was Paul that's when the subterfuge actually happened? That's when they took the Bible. Was that the point in time? And before you answer, talking to my buddy about this the other day, Daniel, isn't it amazing how they've brainwashed us to believe that like timelines are real? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like come on. Like we don't know if 1,000 years ago was 100,000 years ago.
We really don't. We really, truly don't. And that's a mind coitus to me, Jay. It's like, wow, we really don't know.
No way to know.
You really don't know.
The dinosaurs. I mean, I laugh, right? And because I talk about the Cretaceous period and the Jurassic period and all these things, and they talk about 500 million years, 700 million years. Who is kidding who? There are guys out there, Michael Cremo in his book, right? He's found human skeletons right next to dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So I mean, everything.
You just don't know, man. And I have an associate degree in anthropology, so I'm very much into anthropology and culture and artifacts. And I mean, you see things anthropologically that just make you scratch your head because you're like, wow, this is hard to explain. So I think the best thing to do is to have an open mind and to be able to objectively receive fact. And it's a cliche, but the more you know, the more you realize that you need to know.
Well, so then back to Paul and the Justinian thing. Do you think is that when they corrupted the Bible?
Well, here's what happened, Jay. And here's this is probably the biggest lie. This is something I call the Diamond New Testament. And what this is, that this has never happened until I wrote this. I don't know how it's possible, but the New Testament that we know of has 27 books, right?
Yep.
And we know exactly when every one of those books was written, Jay. We know the dates within a year or two. We know exactly when it was written.
Right.
So you think when you pick up the New Testament, you're reading it, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Corinthians. It's all in order. That's what you think.
Right.
But if you look at it, and start researching, I said to myself, what's the chronological order of the New Testament? If I really want to know what happened in the New Testament, let me read the books in order. And I went and I started and I looked at it and I was blown away, Jay, to realize that the New Testament is totally, completely, 100% jumbled up.
Yes.
And if you read it in order, it's so simple. It's the apostles of the Christ, right? Paul responds. The apostles of the Christ, right? Paul responds. The apostles of the Christ, right? Paul responds. In modern parlance, the New Testament was a Twitter war between the apostles of the Christ and the apostles of Paul. And if you read it, it's amazing. It's amazing reading because you see the apostles of Christ were teaching one thing. Paul was teaching another thing. And again, I fully 100% support your right to believe in Roman Christianity or Roman Protestantism. I support your right to believe in the religion of the Apostle Paul, but I also support your right to know that the religion of the Apostle Paul is not only not the religion of the Christ, it is a antithetical, competitive religion to the religion of the Christ. So much so, you talk about getting in touch with your inner reptile, Paul went and killed the Apostle James, who took over from the Christ when he left, on the stairs of the temple, and Josephus gives us a almost sickening blow-by-blow account of it. Man, that's why they don't let us know what the order is, because if we read it in order, we would say, wait a second.
Yeah.
They're screwing us. But, you think about history is written by the winners. You think, that means, history books and stuff. But no, guess what? It also means our sacred scriptures are written by the winners.
Exactly.
Mind-blowing, Jay. Mind-blowing.
It is. And I'm just going to just dumb it down because, we're at a high level. For people that aren't really, reading, they're not knowledgeable of your books, and they're not reading at the levels that you and I are reading. And again, this is not judgment or being egotistical or arrogant. Honestly, guys, and by the way, I don't really care if you think I'm crazy when I say this, because, he's way more humble than I am. Essentially, the religion of the Lord is Luciferianism. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it right now. Okay? If you don't believe that, you need to do some work. You need to do some reading. You need to do some research. You need to see who's in charge of our political structure. You need to understand what they do up there in Northern California. Okay? You need to understand some of the highest level Masonic ritual. You need to understand what's really going on. And again, I'm not here to say that I'm some nut job or Jeff's some nut job, conspiracy theorist with, our tinfoil hats on. This is easily decoded today. Mm-hmm. Easily. The same people that perpetrated 9/11 just perpetrated the Route 91 massacre. The 9/11, it's the same thing. It was like another 9/11. There's so much ritualistic symbolism in it.
So sad.
And yeah, and I'll put an article, I'll link an article in here in a second that you guys can all read from Robert Stanley about the Vegas incident. But again, this is literally a Luciferian faction. Okay.
And Jay, if people do nothing else, I challenge them. Sit down on your computer, Google or whatever your favorite search engine is, New Testament books, chronological order.
Right.
Write down the chronological order, read them in that chronological order, and then call me an idiot, call me an antichrist, call me a blasphemer. Go ahead, read it in the chronological order, and then have at least the integrity to write me back and say what you think now.
Right. Exactly. Or easier, just read your books. I mean, again, most of the people that are watching, most of the people that are in this group are advanced. They are aware. They're not, some of them are baby seekers, as I call it, but they're aware enough to reach out, to raise their hand and say, I want to be in this group. I want to learn. I want to be told. I don't want to be walking down the street, looking up at the CNN teleprompter, being told that there's a 64-year-old guy who shot out the windows of a pyramid, of the Mandalay Bay, and killed all these people. If you believe that, and I'll steal this from Mike Cernovich, who wrote this the other day on his Medium, Cernovich Media, whatever he's doing nowadays. He literally said like this: if you believe that, then your operating system in your brain is corrupted.
Absolutely.
And you need to reinstall a new OS for your mind.
Yep.
Yours doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. And Jay, even when they started out, they were saying he was shooting out of his hotel window. And it wasn't until people like you and me that have been to Vegas, lived in Vegas, you wait a second. Hotel windows in Vegas don't open.
No,
there's no balconies. And then they say, oh, he shot him out. See, people don't realize that, though. But, we've been there. We live there. They don't open, folks. And period.
Well, like I said on Rex's podcast when we first did this the night after, right? Because, I think he's got
That's where I first saw you. That was a great show.
He's got 1 million views on that podcast. And literally, I was telling people, like, guys, if you would shoot out the windows of a hotel in Vegas, first off, it's like 6-inch glass. You would need a Medigun, okay? And then you would have everyone in the hotel on top of you in under a minute.
Yeah. And keep in mind, it wasn't Circus. It was Mandalay Bay.
Right. So,
that's an inside Vegas joke, but
this is at a point. It's funny you say that, right? Because it's an inside job by the Mandalay people. It's Sheldon Adelson. It's obviously Michael Chertoff. Again, I'll post the article that Robert Stanley did, which, by the way, Jeff helped him with the article, guys. But it's so
just one little bit, one little tidbit.
You helped him enormously. And by the way, everybody knows that Robert's going to be on next Wednesday. So it's perfect timing for me and Jeff to talk now and then Robert come on. Have you done a podcast with him before? Maybe I should bring you on with him.
I did. He was on I did a podcast with him 2 or 3 days ago on my channel. It was outstanding. And I was very gratified because I got a lot of comments that said, Jeff, I've heard Robert Stanley a lot. People asking the same questions. It's the same thing. I think that you did a good job opening him up and getting
good. I'm going to watch it.
Talk about.
Beautiful. Then I'll watch it.
And as bad as, a lot of people make fun of George Norrie. I learned that from George Norrie. George Norrie he's not Art Bell, but he's a master at getting the guests to give their opinion. And George isn't trying to lead or guide, direct or convert, but he's a master at getting people to say what they really believe and bringing out their opinion. And that's all I did.
That's awesome, man. Well, I got to watch that then to sort of prep me because Robert's an interesting character. But just to back to that, whatever they're doing, again, whatever this Luciferian group, and I'm going to get to that in a second. I want your opinion on that. But their goal clearly is at this point, because I've heard you say this on Rex's show too, I know you're down on the same path, is that they're trying to create civil war here. They're essentially trying to fragment the population to the point where the people that are spiritually aware or just somewhat aware literally turn on the people that are asleep, the sheeple. And it just becomes, bedlam or, chaos or anarchy or whatever it is. It's very clearly that's what they're trying to do now. You can see it in everything, right? You see it even in National Football League, right? Like they have guys kneeling, the football players are kneeling down. So this is just getting to a point now where people are so brainwashed and so conditioned. And unfortunately, the people in the quote unquote protected class that make money, the celebrities, the pro athletes, the millionaires, they're now being forced down the Luciferian doctrine to be like, bow down to the Luciferian doctrine or you'll be ostracized. You won't get paid. You'll be in the bush leagues or you're, fuck, they'll kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, that's the way it is. I mean, you know, all these people, it makes me laugh, right? Like in the last 2 weeks, getting an outrage about Harvey Weinstein. Now, as a guy, people know me, I was an actor, right? So I've been in that game. I know what's going on. I've been telling people for 20 years since I left the business, you guys have no idea what those people do. They're not even, half of them are soulless. So for all these people to like be so
literally, I think, Jay.
Yeah, well, right. We can talk about that, but like for them to be confused and outraged and upset and all this, like people like, why would these women not turn? I mean, it's like, are you guys serious? These aren't even people in Hollywood. They'll do anything for $1.
And unfortunately, the actors, actresses will do anything to get on the big screen.
It's incredible, dude. It's
the thing that I wonder, Jay, and this is just throwing this out there, I'm not a politics guy, but are they letting this whole, abuse of actors and actresses get out there to hide the real wicked story? Because what adults do at the end,
maybe.
Is it pedophilia? Is that they're really trying to hide?
Well, so
or distract from?
Well, so what Shane said, and Shane had very, 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 very profound, insightful information on this. And he said that, you know, essentially the reptilian, how did you rephrase it? The control structure has really come down in the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously, Trump getting into office, whether Trump represents Luciferian connections or not, he might, probably somewhere along the line. I mean, in my opinion, you know, the guy that really writes the best about all of this is Joseph Patrick Farrell. Are you familiar with his works? I
am.
Okay, so JPF, him and I are friends. He's always been on this. He doesn't ever show his hand, but he's actually, I know he's in our camp because he's always telling me there's been somebody in the backdrop watching over all of this for a long time, and I'm pretty sure
wow.
it is now. But he also decoded 9/11. He decoded what you said too about, you know, the towers. So the reality here to me is that all of this battle on the earth right now between these ruling families it's like infighting. And Trump represents some other ruling class that wants land or gold or money or something. And they're just all fighting amongst each other now. And it's clearly to me, what Shane said is that since the control grid or the control mechanism has really eroded, all of the pedophilia, the cults, and all the other stuff that's been going on that was always like highly secretive and covered up is now just out in the open, and it's basically every person for themselves. So some people are being sacrificed. Clearly, Harvey Weinstein was just sacrificed.
Absolutely, I agree. And as strange as it sounds, you know, Rex and I have had a conversation along these lines. Because Rex is, you know, very much about all of the, you know, electronic technology that's being deployed against us.
They love us so.
I mean, they love us so much. But I mean, you know, whether it's, you know, 5G or, you know, HARP or Stinger or whatever, they are no doubt leveraging a lot of energetic technologies against us. Yeah. And I think what you've said ties into it because you can see that it's not subtle anymore. You can see that they're throwing the whole gates open. And I think, Jay, and this is the reason why it encourages me, I think they realize that they're losing. I think they realize that they can't win. And even using all this electronic technology against us, they've realized that energetic power is the real power. And what they're trying to do is copy true energetic essence, true energetic power that we as spiritual people have the genuine article. So they can't make it as strong and as powerful as what we have if we tap into our divinity, our sovereignty, and our freedom. And I'm encouraged because they're trying to copy us. They know that they're losing. And Jay, that tells me, man, we're on the winning side if we can just keep our heads up and if we can just not faint in this fear, if we can stay fearless and keep pressing on. I really think we're on the winning side, and I think the tide has turned and they know they're about to lose. And if we can just hold on, it's going to end in our favor. So the optimist in me the elo human in me wants to agree. Yeah.
I just feel, and I know I want to get to your the Project Bluebeam, this false Antichrist occurance, because I know you're in the same path as me. I want you to get to your theory here in a minute, and we're going to go at least another 30 minutes because I want people to ask questions. Hey Cheryl, how are you? I know Cheryl Newberry is watching this right now. She's not a fan of Robert Stanley. I want to be full disclosure though. I also used to not be a fan of Robert Stanley because Robert Stanley is essentially telling people the opposite of what Gerald Clark. Gerald Clark is very loved. Gerald Clark's a close personal friend of mine, very beloved to this group. You know, he's written a lot about the Anunnaki. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. He's 31 patents in laser and integrated circuits. Brilliant guy. And now he's, doing a lot of video production, trying to get his Anunnaki screenplay. And he's a close personal friend of mine. But what I have learned subsequently reading your stuff, and not just your stuff, Stanley's and other people's stuff too, the whole good versus evil, in the garden of good and evil, the reality is this: the duality of the polarity reigns supreme in every way. And the only way that you can understand that for everybody watching this right now is to think of the Hermetic principles. Think of the pendulum. The pendulum is constantly going back and forth. So if you understand that, then that means that good is going to become evil. Day is going to become night. Dark is going to become light. So when you understand all of that, you can see that the good people become bad. It's like the whole Empire Strikes Back, the whole thing. The dark side and the white side. You know what I mean? The good force and the bad force. All that stuff. So it's just like, they're always, like Hollywood being the cipher, they're always trying to tell us that, like, you can't think of just there's only forces of good and there's only forces of dark, right? Because even the forces of good are sometimes in the middle. And then sometimes the forces of dark pretend to be the forces of good. So it's like, if you understand it like that, I'm saying that Robert Stanley is right, because Robert Stanley says that Enki is Enlil, and Enlil becomes Enki. And they all just play roles and change things around whenever it suits their fancy. And so I wanted to say that to Cheryl. A lot of people believe that, because Gerald has said that Enki was always for good, because Enki, was our creator. He's not. None of the Anunnaki, in my opinion, are good. They're out for their own interests. They're out for they're demigods or whatever they are, part of the Elohim, whatever, But it's just, it's more important to me to understand that from this standpoint going forward, that these people, these beings, these demigods, whatever they are, these majestic lizards, they're not for us.
Yeah. And that's so instructional to me, because one of my weaknesses is that, over the past 5 years, I've written 15 books and I've built, 900 videos, and I'm so focused on what I study and what I'm looking at and what I'm, dialing into, that I haven't really been able to look at many other people's work. And part of me, I used to be a stand-up comic, and the worst thing you can do as a stand-up comic is go watch other stand-up comics, because you find yourself wanting to use their lines, and there's bleed over. So I try to make sure that I'm not, stealing or plagiarizing, but I still have a lot to learn, because I don't know a lot about, like Gerald Clark. I don't know if I've ever read one word that he's ever written. How's that possible?
Right.
And I'm missing out on a lot of stuff. So that's a weakness of mine.
No, but I mean, it's just, this is life, man. I mean, it's impossible to keep up with all of it. Gerald's brilliant. I mean, he's decoded a lot. His decoding of the Sumerian, the Enuma list, the Babylonian text, everything. He's a brilliant guy, but it's so hard to truly understand, what these quote unquote control mechanisms have done, because they've just layered everything with riddle. And like I said, there's so much error and riddle in everything. No matter how smart you are, it's just this great enigmatic, wrapped in a box riddle that's almost every time you pull one layer back and figure it out, there's another layer to it, Yep. It's like Manly Hall would say about the initiates, who would actually become an esoteric initiate to carry forth, to quote unquote, to be the keepers of the golden flame or whatever. And you would have to go through so much, and then it would be so much programming and mind control that even if you did become one, you might not even know what you were even doing, because they owned your mind.
Yep.
So it's really tough to keep it all together. But let's get into your story, not your story, but your belief. And obviously a lot of other people believe this, but what do you think is kind of the end game of this Lord's cabal?
That's a great question. And again, I'm very strictly textual about it. Mm-hmm. And we're talking mainly New Testament. Do I have that book over here? Yeah, I wrote this book called The Final Message of the Last Apostle. And what people don't, and it says, is there an ancient UFO alien agenda in the pages of the New Testament? And what people don't understand about John is that the Apostle John, he was the last apostle, literally.
The real one.
They all had died, except for John. And John wrote 40 years, Jay, after all the other apostles were dead. And he wrote 60 years after all the other apostles were dead, and at least 40 years after Paul was gone. So John writes with this incredible perspective that nobody else had, Jay. He looked at the whole thing. I mean, he's writing in about 100 AD. He was there when the Christ showed up. He was there for all of it. And he has been sitting back and waiting for 40, 50, 60 years, taking it all in, knows he's going to die. So he sits down and he writes. And the things he writes about, he shows us that the Apostle Paul was a competing religious leader.
Right.
And then he shows us something, Jay, that is just incredible, and it's an answer to what's this end game. He shows us that there's a UFO, ET, alien agenda woven throughout the pages of the New Testament.
Right.
And it's exclusively centered on the major events in the life of not the Christ, but of Jesus.
Right. Jesus of Nazareth, the Nazareth-ian.
Absolutely.
They call him
the
the Bethlehemian, right? The Bethlehemian.
You look at Bethlehem. That story was copied from
Amazing.
Hundreds of other ideas and thoughts and religions. Yeah. But if you look in the New Testament, if you look at it literally, what it literally says is that the Lord paralyzed and immobilized Mary and injected into her womb something. And Luke, a doctor, wrote it. He didn't use the word for baby. He didn't use the word for child. He didn't use the word for fetus. He used the word for a supernatural thing.
Artificial insemination. Right.
That's why every time I get up and I have, my coffee or whatever in the morning, I'm called a heretic, an antichrist, and an atheist at least 5 times before I even have my breakfast. But if you look at it objectively,
it's right there.
The birth of Christ is filled with UFO, AT, alien agenda. If you looked at it today, you'd say, oh, that's a UFO abduction, artificial insemination.
Right, exactly.
And then at the crucifixion of Christ, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jay. And all of a sudden, we think, oh, it got dark. No, it didn't get dark. Read the text. A shadow fell over Jerusalem.
The Lord showed up.
Something showed up that cast a shadow over Jerusalem. And not only that, it was there for 3 hours. And after 3 hours, Jesus all of a sudden says, why are you leaving me here?
Right.
So he looks up, and this thing that was blocking out the sun left.
Exactly.
He thought it was supposed to take him. So he's saying, hey,
I don't want to stay down here with these people.
There it is at the crucifixion. And then at the resurrection, guess what? That thing comes back. So I add insult to injury, I don't think the Christ ever got crucified.
No.
There may have been a false flag patsy operation, much like Paddock, that detailed it, that had a crucifixion. And then when you look at the second coming, the quote-unquote second coming of Christ, here's where the fake Jesus comes in. I call him plastic Jesus, Soylent Jesus, whatever. It says that when God, quote-unquote, comes back, he's going to come back, and the whole imagery, Jay, white horse, here he comes. And, if you read it in the King James, it's so majestic. And he has a name written that no man knows. That sounds majestic.
Sure.
But if you read it in the original Greek, it says he has an identity that he's covering with a cloth.
Right.
He's hiding his own identity.
Exactly.
And then it says it is being called out that he is the Word of God, tying him to that Elohim. He's got his own name literally covered by a cloth, saying, hey, I'm the Word of God, trying to say I'm the Elohim. And then he says that he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, clear Jesus stuff. So here's this guy coming back saying, I'm the Word of God, I'm Jesus, but the whole time he has his real name hidden and covered.
Yes.
And another majestic writing, and he's clothed in vestures dipped in blood. Sounds majestic, sounds wonderful. But you know what it says in the Greek? And his garments are covered with arterial blood that is spewed from arteries.
Right.
He's a red-handed murderer.
And the people
What's he doing, Jay, to come back? Oh, he's going to save us all. He's a loving, kind God. No, he comes back killing people, destroying people, and taking over the planet. It's the same dragon.
Yes.
Hiding who he really is. Saying, I'm Jesus, who I made. Saying, I'm the Word of God. But, Jay, those are things he's saying that he is, and he's got his name, his own name covered. Who hides their name and says there's somebody else?
Right.
That's the God that we're all looking for. And these are the things I'm a pastor of a church. I'm an evangelist. I'm seeing this. I'm like,
what the hell?
What the hell? And if I had more integrity, Jay, it would have taken me 10 minutes to get out of it, but it took me almost 10 years. I'm living in the church. Church bought my car. Church pays my bills.
Your wife.
I got 3 kids that eat 3 times a day.
Of course.
I wish that I had more integrity to leave sooner, but when you see that stuff, it's like, and then you think, how can nobody else know it? I can't be the first person that's ever seen this. And I still can't believe I'm the first person that's ever seen it, but maybe I'm the first person that just didn't have anything left to lose that came out and said, you know what? Enough with it. That's where the Christian whistleblower comes from, blowing the whistle on the lies and the deceit and the fact that the Apostle Paul and big-time religion has taken the liberating message of the Christ and turned it into a fear and guilt control matrix.
It's all fear and guilt. It's like I always say, in the last podcast that I did with Shane in here, there's only two ways in life. There's only two emotions in life. There's literally fear, which is ego and greed and all the other nonsense. And then there's love.
That's good.
Right? And then there's love. And if you live by the rule of love, not the rule of law, the rule of law is his laws, the Lord's laws. That's why all attorneys are soul suckers. That's why the family court system is debauchery, because it's literally the rule of the Lord. The law
absolutely is.
The law is the Lord. The Lord is the law. It's all a bunch of BS.
And in that first book I read last night, The Divine Secret Garden, the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace.
Yes.
And then the last thing is, against which there is no law.
No law.
It's a dichotomy.
It's amazing.
The fruits of the Spirit and the Christ, or the Lord, Paul, and the law.
Hey, man, you got to give Lucifer props. This guy literally created the greatest riddle that mankind has ever seen. Most of us still don't understand.
Riddles within riddles within. It's a riddle wrapped up in an enigma, shrouded by controversy.
Right, stuck in a what's that box they call? Rex always talks about that blocks all the electronic.
A Faraday cage.
A Faraday cage.
But you got to hand it to the Lord.
You do.
He's brilliant. But again, like I said about me, in 36 years, you should learn a couple things. He's had thousands of years to do his homework and study and watch us and figure out how to manipulate us. And yeah, he's done a good job. But if we would just wake up and learn to just read, and if we could just learn to be objective,
right,
we would defeat him. Objectivity leads to freedom, but nobody wants to be objective.
Jeff, you said it in the second book again, and you've written a number of books. And I can't wait to read all your books. And again, guys, please, jeffdaugherty.com. All of his books are there. Buy them. They're not expensive. Just order them. This guy has decoded everything. And coming from me, a lot of these guys know I'm giving you high praise, man. I've read everything.
I'm very humble, Jay. I really am.
I don't want you to be humbled. I just want you to know that you're a man of amazing, decode. What you've done is a gift to the world. But the reality is this. This is what I think. And you said it in your second book, and this is the the serpent's book.
Serpents and doves in the garden of the gods.
Serpents and doves in the garden. We really are more powerful than the Lord. Okay, the Lord is a reptilian being. He does not have the Elohuman qualities.
Mm-hmm. And he's a fallen God. He's fallen.
He's already been thrown out.
We're Elohim in training.
Exactly.
And that's why he hates us so much, Jay. That's why it's all this. Why all the deceit? If you're the strong, badass, boom, benching 400 pounds God, why do you got to worry about the 87-pound weakling?
No.
You don't have to create all this deception and everything.
It's all nonsense, man.
But he knows that if we ever find out who we really are, the whole paradigm will shift. And he's the one he's the one that's going to be running. And we're the one that's going to be chasing. He'll be the guy in the elevator about ready to receive a straight right hand.
It's already happening, Jeff.
From Jay Campbell.
It's already happening. I'm glad I finally told that story. Only one other person knows that story, but I put it out publicly now. But honestly, that was so great for me to think, because I always, all this time, it's been 2 years ago, I'm like, why does my wife do that? What does she let me defend her honor? I love her, But the reality is that I want to talk about where we are in the timeline. And I know you haven't gotten that far, and I don't want to give it away, but I'm just going to tell you anyway because it makes this podcast even better. Pinella doesn't have a good out. He doesn't have a good outcome. His outcome says that Trump is not who we think he is, and he then.
Oh, really? That's in the books?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm just going to give you a breakdown right now because some of the people have read the books that are watching right now. He thinks that Trump is Elijah, and Elijah is the trumpeter. The trumpeter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that he doesn't think that he doesn't think we have much time left.
Interesting.
And that everything is a simulation, and the simulation just starts over. And obviously, he agrees with you as he agrees with me and people like us that, you know, the key is that who cares about our physical meat suits right here, right? It's about our soul. It's about evolving our souls, waking the F up and getting out of here when we have that opportunity. So that's obviously encoded in each of us, and we can all figure that out. But his, like I said, his final scenario is not positive. So understanding that, I don't think you believe that. I think you believe that we can have a good, because you agree, you think that we can manifest better days, a golden age, whatever. And it may actually be happening, but where do you think we are on the timeline of the false flag, Jesus showing up again? Are we close? I mean, it's seemingly things are getting pretty out of hand right now.
Well, you know, that's kind of the conundrum, because, I mean, even we talk about the Apostle Paul, he wrote in the book of First Thessalonians that he was going to be alive when this rapture thing he made up happened. He expected it to happen. Everybody expects it to happen in the day they're in. But I mean, as you look at world events, and I look at the panic that is set into the ruling paradigms, and I really think that I think they know that their gig's up, Jay, and that makes me think that they're going to try to make a last. That's the one thing. When you start beating a big bully, I mean, it's, again, you back them into a corner, and they can do crazy, outrageous, unpredictable, stupid stuff.
Right.
So I'm afraid that they may try to do something crazy and outrageous. And this, you know, this final false flag, the alien invasion, or the Lord coming back with a fleet of aliens to support him.
I mean, it might be Independence Day, Jeff. It literally
might be. But here's the thing, I think, Jay, and correct me if you think I'm too optimistic. I think that the work I'm doing, the work you're doing, the more people that put this information out, it directly reduces their ability to pull it off successfully. I mean, think about 9/11. If we'd have known about 9/11 2 years ahead, and we all were saying, look, here's what's going to happen, and we were laying out the exact specificity, don't you think that they might have said, damn, these guys figured it out, we got to try something else?
Right.
So that's my hope, is that we can get this information out to sufficient numbers of people that the people that want to perpetrate this scenario are like, damn, we can't do this anymore. We have to try something else.
So
I think they're going to try something else, my brother.
Well, okay, so I agree with you. I believe that we're really close. I believe that something massive scale, a global impact is going to happen. The 91 harvest was a playground type thing for them to see how they could, like, you know, change public opinion and start doing what they're doing. I mean, you know, it's so crazy, this transhumanism, this AI stuff. You know, yesterday they put out, I don't know if you saw this. I mean, poor Hugh Hefner. The guy's body's not even cold, and they put a trans dude.
I saw that in Playboy.
Okay, so anyway, no.
I didn't see it literally. I didn't buy the magazine.
I should share the screen. I have it on my screen right now because I have all my buddies who were sending me today, but I'm not going to go there because I
saw the ad.
I don't want to be accused of anything. But the reality is that the Luciferians, the Lord, the ruling powers that be, the royal bloodline families, the Illuminati, whoever it is definitely getting desperate, as you said.
Yeah.
The grid has come down. They're not in control like they once were for whatever reason. Maybe it is cosmic energy exchange. Maybe it is people waking up. Our DNA is, we all know this, our DNA is definitely programmable. There are latent circuits in our DNA that can literally turn on and activate. This whole nonsense that you're only one way, you're genetically only one way is BS. It's also more Lord's BS. So we are programmable. We are a genome that can change. So I agree with you. I believe if more of us wake up and resonate at this frequency, sharing information, servicing others, not taking advantage of people, I think that we can control our own destiny, and I think we can manifest a better world. But I agree with you, as Manly Hall said, and all the great philosophers and teachers and keepers of the sacred flame have said, there is always darkness before dawn.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Jay, do you remember the monkeys?
Of course, the whole fabrication.
I had a chance to meet the monkeys and actually get inebriated with the monkeys.
That's awesome, man.
And I wish that I'd have known then what I know now, because I just out of the blue yesterday, I started the words to Daydream Believer came to me, and it said, "Wake up, sleepy Gene. Oh, what can it mean to a daydream believer?" Right. And I started thinking, What if it's GENE, wake up sleepy gene?
No doubt.
There's something within our DNA that can wake up, and we can stop being daydream believers.
Right. Absolutely true.
So whether, whatever happens in this world, Jay, whatever happens in this simulation, whatever happens to this thing, if we can wake up and get enough wits about us and realize that we are divine, we are sovereign, we are free. Right. If we can get to the place that when this thing ends, we're in control of our destiny, and we can go to where we want to go after this and not where somebody or something wants us to go, that's a victory. That's a win. And I think that's our main objective now, is to do everything we can while we're here to correct this and work for a better world if we can do it. But if it all does blow up and go to hell, for us to be divine, sovereign, and free, and to be able to decide our destiny after we get out of this meat suit.
That's all that matters, brother. And I say that to everybody. I say that to you and I. Like I said, dude, we're definitely spiritually connected, cut from the same cloth, but that's all that matters.
I feel like I've seen you before or know you. It's a weird thing.
There's no coincidences, dude. I'm sure we probably, as I've said this to other people that I've met, through this technology. I always make fun of social media and technology, but the gift of it is that you and I can come together again. But we probably were in the Roman Foreign Legion in a past life, killing.
You know what? We might have been. Do you think you ever lived on Mars, Jay?
I don't know, but I definitely know that my soul has lived many lives, as has yours, because this is the truth. And I mentor a lot of young men. And
Heidi Vandenberg told me I lived on Mars, Jay. With her.
Brother, I wouldn't be surprised. That's one thing that I have figured out is that to be as evolved as we are soul-wise, to not be one of those meat puppets walking around out on the street with no idea. You've lived many lives.
Yeah.
Your soul has lived many, many lives.
And if we believe those books, we're family. That's why there's a connection, a realization, a recognition.
It's very possible. It's probably not even possible. It's probable.
Yeah, I would agree.
But yeah, it's the only thing you can do is get your soul right. And you get your soul right by serving other people.
What do you think Rex's breakdown is between Majestic Serpent and Elohuman?
Rex is watching this right now, so he'll listen to it. Rex is definitely 75% Elohuman.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Yeah, he's way more Elohuman than me. He doesn't go around wanting to kill people.
That's true. But we need, again, we get back to balance. We need everybody on the team.
Spiritual warriors, brother. That's what
we do. We really do.
We're spiritual.
And that's a battle I have, Jay. I know this isn't part of the podcast, but I have this real battle in my heart.
Yeah.
I would love to be a vegetarian. I love animals. I love my cat. I don't like things dying for me to eat. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm a warrior, and I'm not optimal if I don't have some amount of meat in my diet.
Well, actually, let's talk about this, and I'm going to get a lot of flack on this, but I've written already prolifically about this. There's a lot of research online, too. You can Google a lot of this. And Gerald Clark, by the way, is a vegan. Gerald Clark was a bodybuilder at one time. The muscular dude, dialed in, and he's now a vegan. He's still very in great shape. He's Gerald's actually, what do you call it, structural integrity person, so he can align people and all that stuff. He's brilliant.
Oh, cool.
So he can get himself into a pretzel, and he's amazing dude. But he's also chosen to be a vegan. My belief, and this is just my opinion, but it's also obviously based on a lot of research I've read, there are select amino acids that the human brain over time, as a human species, has evolved to utilize that can only come from animal protein. And a lot of people who go vegan after 8 or 9 or 10 years start having serious deficiencies of that. And it leads to, I won't go down that path, but it leads to.
I did it for 2 years, Jay, and I never felt horrible, but I just never felt good.
Well, for a lot of people, it gets bad. So, but again, it's always a choice. If you're, like I always say, and this is from the Lost Teachings of Atlantis, if you're going to choose to eat, meat, you bless the food before you eat it. You give thanks and praise, and you eat it and say, thank you for allowing me this blessing to, for me to survive. But I don't judge people. If that's your choice, that's fine. I write in my books, I write about veganism a lot. I say, this is the type of protein that you can get. And thankfully for vegans now, there are great matrix assimilated, multi-spectrum amino acid blends, like from pea protein, from hemp protein. So you can get really good bioavailable protein now from non-animal sources. But you got
it doesn't worry that it's so heavily processed and all that stuff.
There's a guy out there. I'll throw him a plug. TrueNutrition.com. And
Okay.
I know the owner of the company, Dante. He's in San Diego, and all of this stuff is legit. His pea protein is amazing.
Cool.
And so I always recommend that to people that are vegan. But no, dude, I like meat. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna eat meat. I'm always gonna eat meat. I just bless it. I give thanks and I bless it. I don't think it's a big problem. But I mean, again, the guy that wrote Lost Teachings of Atlantis, who's connected to the Law of One and all that stuff, he has a whole chapter on why it's okay to choose to eat the way that you want. That it's about sustenance. And if you're going to choose sustenance, I mean, he likens it.
And if you recognize what the animal's done for you, and you recognize their spirit, and you give thanks and honor them.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be better if you could do it, if you could, hunt it yourself, but that's just not the society we live in.
No, we don't live in that world anymore, but that would be, you're right. If you're catching like wild caught game, it would be a lot better. Fish and stuff. That. But yeah, we just live in a different world, man. Well, dude, This is absolutely epic, man. First off, final words, just what are your thoughts? And then obviously I want you to tell how people can find you online.
My main thing is this. There's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of teachers. There's a lot of isms. There's a lot of videos. There's a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, folks, be your own guru, guide your own spirit, master your own ascension. Stay fearless and unindoctrinate yourself. That's the bottom line.
You said something really good earlier that I didn't hit on, and you said read. And I really do believe that the majority of people today, and obviously I talk about Dr. Anthony Napoleon. He's written an amazing book called Shadow Men. If you haven't read that book, please get that book immediately.
I've dealt with a lot of shadow men, but I've never read that book.
You got to read the book. It's like he talks about, he's a psychiatrist who worked for all the alphabet agencies. And it's literally due to decoding of what they've done to society to dumb people down, to enslave them. It's incredible. It's an amazing book. But this is what we're seeing now, and that's part of that is not reading. He calls it the Google IQ.
It's so sad. You're so true.
The majority of millennials today have been taught, because they're the first generation. I always pick on millennials, but it's really just because of where they are online. They're the first generation that never learned to read because they were brought up where they could use Google at 6 years old.
Yep.
So if you don't read things and actually gather it, right, because there is a part of reading something, whether it's Kindle or a book, and I'm a paper guy, but when you read it, your body warehouses it. Your mind warehouses it.
It does. And I got a 3-year-old granddaughter FaceTiming me, Jay.
Exactly, dude. So all these kids today, and I call kids because I'm 47. I'm not your age yet, but I'm getting there. They don't read. They regurgitate information. They Google it. They watch YouTube videos, circus partners on YouTube. They don't watch people like you, unfortunately. They should be. But the reality is that you have to read. Like, that to me is like the most important thing today. I always tell everybody, read. Yep. Take stuff in. Let it internally resonate. Yep. Let it fill
It's interesting, Jay, you say that. If you don't want to read my books, if you don't read Jay's books, but you want to learn to read, but you still like stuff that's exciting, every now and then something comes out that is quote-unquote entertainment that's showing you behind the curtain. If you want to learn, check that out.
Yeah, I know, dude. I know about that movie. I heard it's amazing.
American Gods. This is a book. This is what's going on behind the curtain. Yeah. This would be a great transition in learning how to read.
By the way, who is that? The author of that book? Who is that? I haven't read it, but
His name is Neil Gaiman. He wrote the Coraline books.
Yep, Neil Gaiman. So amazing how there's just glimmers of things. And even the Hollywood people too, they're always putting out ciphers. They've been putting out ciphers from the beginning. I mean, there's so many different books. But dude, this has been amazing. I'm so humbled that you came on today. I mean, this is probably I'll just say it right now. I mean, like, this is the best podcast I've done in the Decoders of Truth. I mean, you dropped so much, and you were so open, and we talked about so much stuff. And like you said, you don't have to believe.
Please have me back. I'd love to come back anytime.
Oh, no, you're going to be a regular. I mean, I'm going to have, you and Rex will do one. I'll try to get Gerald out of his cartoon cave to come on and do one. But I'm definitely, the next one I'm going to do is me, you, and Shane, because you'll really like talking to Shane about the reptilians.
Absolutely.
And like the power structures and the control structures and all that stuff. So, dude, thank you.
I go on with Rex and Jenny, Moonstone, and Heidi and all these people, and I sit there and learn. So and I'm learning from you today. It's a real honor and a privilege for me to be here, and I'd be glad to come back anytime. And I salute all of the listeners and viewers that are here seeking after truth. It's an honor to be amongst you. It really is.
So awesome. Yeah. And again, everybody that's watching says thank you. We had a good group. We had probably like 18 to 25 people watching live the whole time. So it's pretty awesome. And then this thing will be blasted out and circulated. So
Absolutely.
When it's over, I'll send you the file, but let me just shut us down. So thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. All right, so we're off on the live stream. Dude, that was
all right, bro. Thanks, bro. That was awesome.